But how have you created this vision for yourself and brought yourself into this level of living?
So 30 years is a very, very long time. And so with that, it's like, I have a shit week. Fuck it. I've got 30 years left to play this game.
You've got 150 million pound plus businesses in the fucking room with you. It's no fucking coincidence that you are exactly what you're surrounded by. If there was some golden pieces of wisdom that Tyler Newman could drop on the world, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean,
did you literally spend everything and end up with not much at all?
Go back, start from scratch and figure out what I want to do, which is when kind of plans for everything that I do now started, led me to here. I'll always remember the first sales call where your heart is pounding and you're sweating. It took the profit from about 900k to what's probably going to be closer to 2 million at this point by the time we're done.
So over doubled the profit.
Together we have clarity, direction, and success way beyond what we ever previously thought possible. Here's your host, Frankie Lee.
First things first, guys, before we get started with this podcast, do me a solid favor and subscribe to this on whatever platform you're listening to it right now. Whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I'd appreciate if you just hit that subscribe button, and it lets me know that the content that I'm putting out for you guys is hitting your ears at the right time. Much love. This podcast is sponsored by contentremoval.com. So whether you're looking to remove any images, videos, search results, fake Instagram accounts, get in touch with us at contentremoval.com. Welcome back to the Frankie Lee podcast, and welcome to my London apartment, which I've stolen for the day off this man, this absolute weapon of an entrepreneur himself, a property entrepreneur, a property mogul, Mr. Tyler Newman. Welcome to the podcast and welcome to your apartment, my man.
Oh, thank you very much. That was probably one of the most energetic introductions to a podcast that I've ever been on. So, yeah,
mate,
good to have you here.
Mate, it's because I'm hyped. That's why. It's because I'm hyped, mate. I've been so hyped to do this.
We've been connected for a while now, so...
I reckon about 12 months, probably a bit longer, maybe 18.
Yeah, probably.
Mate, obviously you've had a great kind of journey so far, and the journey's not over, but I think we should give people a bit of an insight into how you've got to this point, and obviously Newman Rose and all that stuff that you're doing. But I think the best place to start is growing up for you.
Yep.
You grew up with a dad that was involved in estate agencies and stuff like that. Was it something that property, because you were around that environment, was property something that you kind of like always loved, or is that something you kind of developed? Or
so I've grown up in, like, I would say the perfect childhood, because I come from a family where my dad is, both mum and dad work within the family business, of course, but successful entrepreneurs operating an estate agency business across the Midlands in the UK, with several offices, big team. And I say perfect because although had amazing things, went to a great school, lived in a nice house, had the nice holidays. I mean, living in London, I've been around kids that have literally come from billionaire families that have had everything, and they're miserable. So I was always on that fine cusp of not having too much, but never been without. But I think one of the things that I'm most grateful for with my upbringing is kind of the values and the lessons and the belief systems my parents gave me. And a lot of people always make that conclusion, so you went into property because family business. But actually, looking back, I wasn't exposed too much to the property side of the business. Maybe 1 or 2 summers I'd go in and when I was off school, help stuff envelopes in the office and whatnot. But for me, I was kind of in my mid to late teens, leaving school. I'd started a couple of businesses, like a couple e-commerce clothing brands. It didn't really take off, but they were the first kind of times that I was exposed to entrepreneurship and running a business, and the highs of making your first sale and your first bit of money, and then some of the lows that come with entrepreneurship as well. But yeah, I had a couple of businesses, and it was leaving school in sixth form that I'd made the decision. 1, I didn't want to go to university, and then 2, I want to be able to live life on my own terms. And once you reverse engineer that, it often means becoming an entrepreneur and having a business of some kind. And so it was actually, I went to a free property seminar at what was the Cumberland Hotel in London, so like 20 minutes away from here. now the Hard Rock Hotel. I actually went to it for the first time about a month or two ago. First time since I went to that free seminar when I was 17 for a YouTube video I shot. It was quite surreal, actually. But yeah, went to that. And then, of course, because my parents understood property, I'd go to the seminar, say, I learnt this, and they'd be able to help me and say, oh, have you considered this? And it was always a conscious decision I did make early on, is I wanted to be able to do my own thing. I never wanted to piggyback too much off my parents. But yeah, that's how it got started for me, really.
Who was the property seminar by?
You know what? So actually, I don't like to mention his name, because if you were to Google his name now, it says bankruptcy, embezzled or lost investor funds, and he's just got a bit of a bad reputation. But
I already know the guy. Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
I know the guy straight away.
Yeah.
If he was one of the big ones that kind of really pumped on property on Facebook and Instagram, and then back in our time, then yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll leave it at that then.
Leave it.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there.
Because I don't want to be associated with anything like that, and definitely don't agree with how he conducted his business. But credit to him, he was how I got my start and exposed me to the exciting world.
I suppose with people like that mm-hmm. there are a lot of charlatans in property. Let's be honest.
Sure,
There's a lot of people that talk about property that probably shouldn't be talking about property, mm-hmm. As we both know. But in essence, with people like that, maybe that's part of your journey. Maybe your journey wouldn't be where it is now if you hadn't gone there. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like one of those things where everything for a reason. But yeah, definitely, guys, if you're listening to this, definitely be careful with who you take advice from, especially in property, UK, Australia, America, wherever you are. Make sure you take proper advice. But obviously you then start to set up your first property business. What was?
So I went to this first seminar, and then of course you get upsold into a 3-day event.
Oh, you got upsold.
I got upsold, but to be fair, the 3-day event was only like £300 or £400, which for me as an 18-year-old, maybe I had a couple of £1,000 in the bank account, or probably less, just whatever proceeds I had from the last clothing brand. Then I made a bit of money on with some friends. So I went on this course, and I was like, okay, one thing I've realised I need to do is, one, I need to start generating an income. I need money coming in every month, because if you've got no money, how are you going to buy property? And I need to start finding deals. And my goal, what I wanted to do, was very simply, I just wanted to buy a house, either below market value or something I could add value to, put a new kitchen in, plaster the walls, refurb it, sell it for profit. For me at the time, that was the most exciting thing in the world. And if I could just do that, I'd be the happiest kid. And of course, doing that as well, you need to raise a bit of money from investors. That was one thing I learned early on, and it's a big part of my property business now, is working closely with investors and raising money. So actually at the time I decided to, and this will come full circle with it, where I'll begin to explain kind of one of the most recent business ventures. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start going looking at property deals, but I also want an income. And at the time, one of my dad's estate agency offices was just going through a bit of a change. They were putting a new manager in, new team, and there was this kid that was just about to start who was same age as me, 18 years old. And the way that model worked with my old man and how he'd kind of employ his agents was, they'd be self-employed, similar to the Australia US model. So it's completely commission only. If you don't sell houses, you don't earn money. And so purely results driven. I thought, okay, that's fair enough. I'm not going to get any special treatment. I can go in there and I can start generating some income selling properties, and I'll be able to start kind of in this office where there was a new manager coming in that could support me. There was a couple other team members that were starting that I could learn side by side. And that was where I kind of first actually started to make a bit of an income. It took me 6 months to make my first paycheck, which was £315 or £320 in the region of, for selling an £85,000 flat in Warwickshire, and just learned as much as I could. And that was the first kind of exposure I had to sales. It's where I made my first sales call. And if anyone's ever done sales calls, you'll always remember the first sales call where your heart is pounding and you're sweating and you're so worried what they're going to say.
Did you have a script and everything?
Yeah, but then as soon as someone answers the phone, the script just goes out the window and you panic. And but that's sales calls. And it was the first time I went and did door to door, because one of the ways we generated new business was we'd go knock on doors. We go say, hey, see your property's up for sale. How are you getting on? Can we help you? And in fact, the first few I did, the doors actually got slammed in my face. I was like, okay, can't get any worse than this. Started to generate a monthly income doing that. Really nothing special, just an average income. And then in the background, I was going with other agents, looking at properties on the market, or again, doing some what we call direct to seller marketing, where I'd write letters or have leaflets, and I put them through doors of properties that looked a bit dilapidated. Say, hey, I'm a first time buyer, I'm a young property investor, I'd be interested in making an offer on your property if you're thinking of selling. And I did that for a whole year and had no results. I'd make offers on properties and I'd get gazumped. I had one where it came down to getting the mortgage or the finance on the property, and then the lender wouldn't lend against it. And then finally, when I was just turning 19 years old, agreed to buy my first property, which is a 2-bedroom terraced house, for £82,000. And I put 10% down as a down payment, as a deposit, which was some money that I'd saved up and earning money, and then refurbed it on essentially some credit cards, some investor funds from family and friends, where I say, hey, look, I need to borrow £5,000, sign a loan agreement, I'll pay you 10% on your money in 4, 5, 6 months' time once the property's sold. And then also just paycheck to paycheck. There was like a 4-month period where I'd have the money come in at the end of the month. I'd pay, whether it was the plasterers, the plumbers, or whatever. And that was the first deal I did. Made about, the numbers were, bought it for 82. I spent 25 on, no, I bought it for 85, spent 25 on it. So I was all in for like 110 and sold it for like 130. So I made like 20, 25 grand. I can't remember the exact numbers on my social media somewhere.
It's not bad on your first deal.
Oh yeah, I was like over the moon. I was buzzing, and you start looking at Auto Trader and thinking, oh, what car can I buy now? But I was sensible enough to put it into another deal and then another deal, and kind of just compounded it from there.
But isn't it interesting, because when you look at UK wages, 25 grand is a hell of a chunk towards most. A lot of people here are still earning 35, 40k a year. Some even less than that. Mm-hmm. 25k chunk. You must be thinking at this point, I've just discovered the Matrix.
It was one of those paradigm shifts that you have in your life where it's like, because the income that I was making was probably around £28,000 per year from the estate agency role. Some months you'd have 5 grand come in, and then the next month you'd have 0 come in because you'd have a completion go through. But it was like, hold on, I've just made this amount of money in, I think from very start to finish, it was actually about 9 months. It was like the slowest refurb in the world because I had no idea what I was doing. But I've made that on this one deal, whereas I'm working day in, day out, every day, trying to sell houses. And it was like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is how I can sort of get to that next level. And
I love how you call it a paradigm shift, because that's what it is for a lot of people. When you realise the difference between a more leveraged way of turning over money and earned income. Yeah. That when you get that, when you can discover the disparity between the two. Yeah. And it finally clicks in your head that it's like, how could you ever go back? You can't ever go back to working a job.
That's it. Yeah. You literally become, what do people say? They're like unemployable, because once someone's ran a business or had that taste, it's very difficult to go back to that earned income model where you are trading your time for money.
How long did you stay in the earned income real estate agent model before you started to pivot completely into development?
So from that moment, I because it was commission only on the estate agency role, I was like, okay, if I do want to make more money doing this, how am I going to do it? And the options are you sell more houses or you sell more expensive houses, because you sell more houses, higher volume, you sell more expensive houses, it's obviously higher values, the fees that you're going to get paid for selling the property is going to be higher, and therefore the commission is higher. And then I saw an opportunity to transition to another brand where I could sell what we'd call the upper quartile of the market. And this was in Coventry. So if anyone in the UK knows Coventry, it's not really associated with luxury property, but there it was like anything about £500,000 plus, with top values being about 1.1, 1.2 million, which you'd sell once in a blue moon. So I actually thought, okay, let me move there. I want to continue to learn about estate agency because it was teaching me so much about sales, negotiation, how to communicate effectively. And I was also working with a lot of people that were at the kind of luxury end, upper quartile of the market. A lot of the clients were suddenly now business owners and high net worth individuals. And so just being around those, and you learn so much more. Whereas before, if I was selling like 120, 134, 140,000 pound properties, it's not business owners that you're dealing with. So I stayed in that model and worked there in Coventry for, I want to say 2 or 3 years. And in the background was kind of flipping houses, did a couple nice ones which made a nice tidy profit. And I was like, okay, again, if I want to earn even more money now, how do I do that? I was like, okay, I need to sell even more expensive properties, and had a friend of mine who was working for the same brand in North London in an office in Cockfosters, right at the very, very top of London. And he just started, and he was telling me kind of what was going on down there. Is like the average property price is like 2.5, 3 million. And he's like, oh, I've got this sale going through and I make this much commission. And
your eyes are just like whoosh.
Yeah, and then you start doing the back of the envelope maths, or in your head you think, well, if I can just sell X amount of property, the fee income is going to be X, and then my commission is going to be X. I'm going to be living, I'm going to be living good. So I thought, right, I'd had a girlfriend at the time. I was like, okay, communicated like, this is what I think the next step for me is. I want to move to London. She decided she wanted to come with me. And told my friend, look, I'm going to come work with you. We agreed to do it. We thought we were going to be an amazing team. Moved down to that office in North London. And the friend of mine I've been friends with for a while, without telling me, decided to move to a completely different agency. And then in that same week, and I only found out after the fact, and then I was starting to look at all of the listings that we had on the market and all the clients, and all of the stock was just absolute crap. It was all overpriced. The sellers weren't motivated. And so I basically just went round and spoke to all of the clients, said, hey, look, like the market was tough back then within that specific subset, that micro area of London. And I was like, there's a big disparity right now between what buyers are prepared to pay and what you're hoping to achieve. And so there's a decision that has to be made. Do you want to sell or do you want to stay? Because if you want to sell, we're going to have to be more aggressive. There's going to have to be a realignment of the prices. And there was just a lot of unmotivated sellers. And, of course, commission only if you're not filling up your pipeline.
If they're not motivated, then you're not selling much. Exactly.
And so actually, it was a very difficult period of my life where the money actually wasn't really coming in because nothing was really selling, and anything that was just very, very difficult to put together. And then I was trying to work 6-7 days a week. I was, miserable really on reflection. And then relationship broke down with a girlfriend and ended up moving out of the flat that I had and actually moved back to my parents, which is kind of, although I was happy living there when you're younger, but once you've moved out, you've experienced moving to London and to then move back with your tail between your legs, admitting failure, it was difficult. But that was a point I was like, right, how can I build back from here?
Was it a failure though, or was it a lesson?
It was an expensive lesson, and it was one of those things that I'm just so glad it happened because, there's without a shadow of a doubt, I wouldn't be where I am now if that hadn't happened.
I think one of the things I've learned is one of the biggest things that takes a toll on any relationship is money. Mm-hmm. Because once money's a problem, now there's stress on that relationship, and men respond to that in certain different ways, and women respond in other ways, and there's a disparity in that, and that's when relationships break down. It's something that you have to learn. It's better to learn that earlier rather than later.
Oh, for sure.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, what when you say did you literally spend everything to and then end up with not much at all?
No, but your burn rate is high because you're burning through cash because you're renting an apartment in London, a 2-bedroom apartment, which, although it's in North London and it wasn't a glamorous place, it was nothing like we're here at today. But it was a couple grand a month, and I was splitting that between me and my missus at the time because she had a good income. But then as soon as she disappeared, suddenly I'm paying all of the rent, and then had my car, and then fuel, and then before you know it, if you're spending a little bit. But I didn't go completely broke. I had cash in the bank that I'd saved, and I'd put into other investments. But it was more so the
humbling, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a humbling moment. I was like, okay, maybe I'm not as invincible as I think I am, and your ego takes a bit of a hit. But I'd taken a step back on the property investing and developing side of things. And so I was like, I'm going to move to London. I'm going to focus 100% on building up income and pipeline there and making a name for myself. But then I was like, okay, I should go back, start from scratch and figure out what I want to do, which is when the kind of plans for everything that I do now started and led me to here.
So in relation to when you say did you start to kind of sit down and kind of assess what you actually truly wanted in life at this point? Because obviously you're sat there at your mum's house,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you're back kind of without beating around the bush, you're back to what seems to in your head be like where you started.
It feels worse, but
it feels worse because you've been somewhere better and now you've had to come somewhere where you don't feel it's better. Even though you love your mum, you love your dad, all that stuff, but you don't want to be living with them after you left. Mm-hmm. What kind of process did you put in place to map out your journey? Because I know when we were talking before the podcast, and me and you have a similar mindset on this, we were talking about like kind of vision boards and that kind of stuff that you've used in your life. What is this kind of things that you started to put into place at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it was a while ago now. It was probably 4 years back, so I'm trying to remember exactly where my head was at. But first kind of month or two, I just took a complete break, a complete breather, just think, like you say, okay, what exactly is it do I want? And for me, it was the actual property investment development side of things was always what I wanted to do. But the thought of buying another terrace property, putting in the same Howden's kitchen, plastering, whatever, that excitement had lost because I'd done it however many times.
Once you've done that 15 times, you don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, so I was like, what I want to do is the bigger deals, and maybe it's definitely just my personality type, but like any entrepreneur, you just constantly want next level. And I thought, what is the next level for me? Well, it's going to be sort of ground up developments, acquiring land, building from the ground up. In my mind, that was how you make the big money, because you refurb a house, let's say making on average £20,000 to £30,000 profit per house. Like I say, if you want to make more money, you either do more or you do bigger. I was like, I don't want to do more. I'd rather do bigger. And then my current business partner, Rosie Cassidy now, who whenever I'm doing these podcasts, I feel like she should be with me because she's like equally, when it comes to the business, she's just an absolute superstar. But we'd known each other from school, and while I was going through whatever I'd been through over the last few years, I'd always been kind of observing her from a distance, and she's got an incredible family business in the property development space, and she's just an absolute wizard and when it comes to property development and land development, and kind of reached out to her, and conversations started happening, and just stars aligned where she wanted to take a step away from her family business because she wanted to do something on her own. Her old man wasn't going to give up the reins anytime soon, and just like me, wanted to prove a point that we can do it on our own. And so we started our development company now, Newman Rose. It took a long time to get off the ground while we were working on other bits. And then also that's where the education company started that we also have together, because at the time she was consulting for other developers and other like land and new home agencies, or estate agents that focus on selling land and of course new homes. But she was consulting like one-on-one on a weekend, so it was taking up a Saturday and Sunday, and she was like charging money for it, but she was also getting like great reviews from it. But she's like, it's taking up so much of my time, how can I scale this? I was like, Rosie, just like, for me it was obvious, just productize it. All of this knowledge that you have, all of these frameworks and ideas and strategies and knowledge that you're giving people, let's just productize it into some form of online program. We can just record it, and then we can sell it for the same price or a little bit more than what you're charging for consultation, but it's just more scalable, and actually it's more valuable for them because they can, instead of only having an afternoon or a day with you, they've suddenly got 20, 30 hours worth of content, and they can have live group calls with you and anyone else kind of on the program. And so she was very much the head coach. I helped to build it, and I was completely in the background. And to be fair, I still am. My knowledge now is more around finance and raising finance and capital structures and the compliance side of things, so I help our students with that. But that was where our education company gets started, and to put it simply, we just help anyone that's like an existing property investor that wants to transition and get to the next level by transitioning to ground-up developments and doing the bigger deals. Maybe they're in a similar situation to me where they've been doing small refurbs or HMOs or whatever. And then the other kind of avatar of people we help is like contractors that are builders, and they've been building out other people's developments, but they've never been able to make the full transition to being the developer themselves. And so really they just need to fill in their gaps in the knowledge of around finding the land, doing the financial appraisals, raising the money for it, how to structure that. So yeah, that's the education business, which we still have today, as well as the development thing.
There's so many moving pieces in development though, isn't there?
More than you could ever imagine. Yeah.
I saw a deal you recently acquired, and it was one in Cambridgeshire, and I know that it was. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm probably wrong, but it was something like the way that the plans were drawn. There would, or you purchased a piece of land. It was must around a couple of mil. The way the plans were drawn, you saw from your knowledge that you could fit more houses and more developments on that land. So the upside to you buying that piece of land was the fact that you could add another million onto it or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
break that down for me, because that was really interesting.
So one of our developments we've got at the moment that is actually more tangible that we can show. So we've got two deals which we're taking through planning permission at the minute, which unfortunately both of them were under NDA on. I can say a little bit about them, but then the main one that we're about to start construction on in the next week or two is in Cambridgeshire, and it's to build 17 houses. 12 of those are kind of 2,500 square foot, 3 and 4 bedroom detached homes, and then 5 are kind of affordable small bungalows at the front. We agreed to buy that coming up to over 18 months ago, and it's a 2.5 acre site in a beautiful village in Cambridgeshire. We bought it for £900,000, and it had outline planning permission. So for context, in the UK you can only build if you've got full planning permission. Outline planning permission is essentially the local council, the local authority approving the concept of development. You've just got to submit another application to kind of finalise some final...
The details on what the development...
The details, whether that's landscape, whether that's design, etc., etc. So we bought it with outline and thought, okay, we just need to submit a reserve matters application, it's called, and then we'll get the full planning. But I don't want to give ourselves more credit than we deserve. But I kind of knew from dealing with property and being in hundreds of kind of luxury homes, and Rosie with her knowledge of like designing floor plans and our architects, our architects have been amazing. We said, like, these are the outline plans. They were the detached homes. They were had plans for 1,500 square foot. We thought without even increasing the footprint of the properties, we can increase the square foot livable area just by redesigning the upstairs with kind of a different roof structure, and basically did that, improved the aesthetics as well, because previously it looked very uninspiring, and just by doing that we added about 8,000 square feet of internal area to the overall design. And of course 8,000 square feet at £300 a square foot soon racks up, so it adds another 2.4 million say to the GDV. Not all of that is profit, because by building more property there's also more construction costs, but the land cost is the same because you've already paid for that. A lot of the professional fees are still going to be the same. The tax, section 106 contributions, which is the tax developers pay to the council, still the same. So it added another it took the profit from about 900k to what's probably going to be closer to 2 million at this point by the time we're done.
So over doubled the profit.
Yeah.
Of the project.
Yeah.
That, my friends, is how you when you get the knowledge of what Tyler's talking about in wherever you are in the world, when you get the knowledge to be able to look at a plan, look at something that's drawn, and before you buy it, because profit is all made before you buy in property, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And it's like you've seen that plan, you've seen it, and you can see that that this just rejigged works a whole lot better. And I think that's obviously we went through a few of your trials and tribulations and your setbacks to start off with, and then to be able, but that's all set you up now to be able to go and look at something and extract that much value with your mind, because and this is why I think this is the most powerful tool in the world. So my question is then, like, what are you doing to facilitate your mindset and growing that? Like, what have you done to get to this point? Because it's not all just learning on the job in property. There's a lot of mindset piece that goes into the back of this.
So I don't want to be cliche, but maybe I'll give a more specific answer in a second. But I've always been obsessed with self-development. And I think, again, this is one of the things that I've just had from my family. My mum and dad are the same. They've always been the one to have kind of books lying around the house or going to seminars, and I've always been the same. And I went to that property seminar when I was 18 years old, but what I also didn't mention is, like, for that first 2 years after I left school, every week, at least like 1 or 2 days out of the week, I was on some kind of networking event, seminar, course. I was just obsessed with I almost didn't see it as spending. I don't see it as spending money still. It's just investing money in myself, because I thought the number one lever that I can pull to increase my income is just increase my knowledge and increase my skills. And the more valuable skills I have, the more knowledge I have, the more money I can earn. And when you're young, you think, you know what, I can afford to spend money. I can afford to kind of just keep reinvesting in myself. To be honest, anyone at any age can afford to do it. But the idea of think, you know what, I'm happy to go a few years without kind of hoarding cash and putting it into other investments. I was like, I'd rather just invest it into people that are ahead of me. And that's been the main thing. So kind of what I do now, if I want to get good at something, and I do this a lot in property, is I'm constantly looking for who is further ahead of me, way ahead of me in terms of like decades and decades and decades, and just look at the patterns and reverse engineer. So when it comes to real estate, I'm a big fan of, like, Blackstone, for example, one of the biggest owners of real estate in the world, and the head of their real estate arm, John Gray. I'll watch anything that I can watch on him, or Sam Zell, or all these guys that are just billionaire real estate investors, and you can just learn so much from them. But they're obviously way ahead. You can learn just as much from people that may be a year or two ahead of you, and that's the main thing. Always trying to see what I can learn from other people, because whether they're charlatans or not, you can learn something from everyone.
I think because like, even though some of the early days charlatans that were selling and shilling these property courses, they may not have been good at the property side of things, but what they were good at is they had great direct sales. They had great models for getting people off social media into a free seminar. From the free seminar, they upsell them. There's that model has been working for years. But to do that successfully and to make millions of pounds out of that model, you got to have a good strong system to repeat that, haven't you?
It becomes a full-time business for them, and by doing that, it takes their time and energy away from running a property business as well as they could, which we're also aware of. We always say, myself and Rosie especially, that we are developers first and educators second. 90% of our time spent day to day is on our own development business and learning from others and investing in ourselves to constantly improve our knowledge. And then we've got kind of a great system set up where we can still help people at some scale, but we're not full-time in a classroom teaching people and doing seminars all day, every day. It's all online based. So
as your knowledge goes up, the knowledge and the scale you can have with the education business goes up as well, if you keep the two side by side.
For sure, because the more knowledge we get, the more valuable we become as teachers. And just what we've learned over the last 12 months, for example, around kind of finance and compliance, and again, like a couple paradigm shifts where it's like, holy shit, okay, like if you can apply this to a property development business, it makes things so much easier. I could think of a few examples when it comes to raising finance. Some of the compliance solutions we've come up with and worked on is just unlocked this massive bottleneck of being able to raise finance, raise equity at scale for these deals without breaching kind of FCA regulations, which is one thing that not a lot of other educators seem to talk about. But yeah,
it just the way that you've invested in your education, the way that you're basically what you're saying to people is look out in the marketplace in whatever you're doing, whether it's property or whatever else, and model what someone else is doing, what works. So have someone a couple of years ahead of you, have someone that's way ahead of you, but then model what works from all of them. And essentially what you're saying is play long-term games with long-term people.
Yep.
Because, which is Naval, because you're going to be a property developer in 10, 15 years because this is your game. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people to get into a lot of things, it's like podcasting to me is a long-term pursuit for me because I'm like, right, I like this. I'm in it now. And what happens is a lot of people pick property development and they want to be in it for a couple of years and make a lot of money, and they want to go into podcasting and be number one inside 1 year. And it just, from what you've learned, why is it important to you to be a long-term vision person?
Well, it's the biggest competitive advantage you can have. The longer the time horizon you're willing to play, the bigger the competitive advantage, because the majority of people are very short-sighted and they just want to, like you say, want the results quick. And this was a conversation me and my boys were having out in Marbella recently, and
which I didn't get invited to.
But it was, a couple of the guys, a few of the guys that were there, it was just 4 or 5.
A couple of them have refused the podcast. Lads, what are you doing?
Oh, we'll get them on. But yeah, like 5 business owners are all killing it. Some of them exited their businesses for like 8 figures. I mean, I think the combined revenue of us as a group in the villa was like 100 million plus per year. Just the conversations have amazing. We kept coming back to like, what are the most common patterns we see amongst the most successful people that we've even spent time with physically? And it just kept coming back down to they've just done one thing for a very long time. And they've just focused on the one thing, and they've just pursued it for a long time. And it sucked for the first year, the second year, the third year, the fourth year. But before you know it, a decade in, they're almost a master at their craft and whatnot. So property investment for me is the vehicle that I want to play for the next however many decades. Property investment development. So, and
I think it's also about picking a vehicle that can facilitate what you want to achieve as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just about playing long term. It's about how much money do I want? How much wealth do I want? How much of everything do I want? Right. And now I need to pick a vehicle that's appropriate to achieving that, because that's what I never did. Mm-hmm. I had a wealth goal in my mind, but the vehicle was wrong.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people that listen to this podcast will have some of you won't have a goal. You need goals. Mm-hmm. You need goals. You need frameworks for what you will and won't accept in your life. I've told them that 17 times in this podcast before, but if this is the first podcast, you need frameworks for values and what you will and won't accept. I reckon we'll talk into that. But, it's really important that you make sure you pick the vehicle that can actually get you to the goal, because that is something that I think, myself included, I've fell short on. Very true.
Very true. I mean, Alex Hormozy, who's popular recently, talks about it a lot, and I think got it from Charlie Munger. It's like it's less important how hard you row than the boat that you're in, and it's important to be in a bigger boat, a better boat, than be on a small canoe rowing hard. Or if you speak to any poker players, they'll say, would you rather be incredibly good at poker or be playing the games against the billionaires who don't really care if they lose or not, who aren't that skilled? It's game selection. You'd rather play the more lucrative games, and
that is so true, mate.
It's so true.
So true.
It comes down to, like you say, having the goals. And I've talked about the decisions I made. It was constantly like, okay, if I want to make more money doing this, how can I do it? And you start reverse engineering. Well, if I want to make, let's say I want to make $1 million a year. Let's say I want to make £1 million profit a year. How many houses would I have to flip, making £25,000 a time, to do that in 1 year? think, okay, well, that's probably not possible. It's going to be an operational nightmare, let alone finding
It's too many
deals.
buyers, too many sellers.
And so it's like, okay, well, then you can do maybe bigger deals. And okay, if I want to do the bigger deals, then the thing is, I haven't got enough money to go buy a piece of land for 900,000 and then spend £5 million or £6 million building out all these houses. Think, well, how do I do that? And then you look at, what are the most successful people doing? And you look at Blackstone and you see that they've built a $500 billion real estate portfolio. So how have they done that? Well, they've raised $400 billion from private investors to be able to do that. And then you start looking at the example I always come back to when I'm kind of explaining this point to people is you look at One Hyde Park, which is beautiful development opposite Harrods. One thing I always kind of looked up to growing up in property, I always think of Candy Brothers, and you'd walk past Harrods and you'd see it. You go on the Wikipedia page and you see that it's a joint venture between the Candy Brothers and a billionaire politician from the Middle East. You think, oh, so they didn't use their own money. They used investor funds. And that's when you have that paradigm shift. It's like, oh shit, all this time I'm thinking I need to be using my own money. I need to be saving money, reinvesting it. And actually, I can just partner with people. OPM that are cash rich, time poor. And I mean, it sounds so simple saying it out loud, but it was one of those things for a long period of time. It just didn't really click. So that's become a huge part of our business now, that in order to do the we're doing, we're partnering people that are putting in money and investing with us.
I think one of the game changing things I've seen in property is when Grant Cardone started taking money off everyday people, because obviously, that's how Cardone Capital scaled from like 250 million to like 2 or 3 billion in real estate.
5.5 now.
Really?
I was just with him out in Miami last month for like 6 days. I say with him, I was at one of his events. Yeah. That's
brilliant, bro. What's he like in real life?
So there's a lot you can learn from Grant. And funny enough, when I went out there and posted it on social media as a Grant Cardone event, you wouldn't believe the amount of DMs I had. It's like, I can't believe you've paid money to go see Grant Cardone. He's a fraud. He's a charlatan. And I think that's a very...
It's easy to label him like that.
It's easy to label him like that, and that is a very...
It's easy to label any Scientologist like that.
True. But to instantly think, why would you go and learn from someone like that, is a very limiting belief system. It's not a nice belief system to have. Like I've said earlier, I believe you can learn something from everyone, and you don't have to agree with everything everyone does to be able to kind of learn from someone. And I'm thinking, well, this guy's built a $5.5 billion real estate portfolio that's made him pretty much almost a billionaire now in the last 5-6 years, most of it in the last couple of years. Okay, there's something I can learn from him here. And of course, maybe I don't want to get to the complexities of it, but there's a difference between what we can do in the UK with the Financial Conduct Authority when it comes to raising money from social media versus out there they have the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. That's their regulatory body. They've got a bit more freedom where they can crowdfund at scale, they can do financial promotions. In the UK, it's a lot more heavily regulated, but that's one of the kind of the things that I've spent the last 18 months solving, fortunately. And so I think, okay, we've kind of got proof of concept now and figured out a way that we can do it in the UK. I want to fly to the US and I want to see how Grant does it. And probably the one thing I learned from Grant, actually, the most important thing is that he is an entertainer. And so they recently set up Cardone Ventures. I don't know if you've heard of Cardone Ventures with Brandon Dawson and his wife Natalie.
Brandon Dawson's a wizard, mate.
He is an absolute beast. And I didn't really know too much about them. I'd watched a couple of their YouTube videos, but if you look at their YouTube channels, they've got probably only a few thousand subscribers, nothing. They're heavily leveraging the 10X brand that Grant has built. So for context, Brandon Dawson, his story is he built a business up to 100 million, sold it, made a lot of money. I think it was 150 million maybe. And then consulted another business and took them from 1 billion to 4 billion, and then wanted to essentially create his own consulting or private equity firm or whatever, and just wanted to partner with somebody whose audience he could leverage. So he partnered with Grant 3 years ago. They built a successful business. So Brandon comes on stage, I think on day one of this event, and talks about kind of Cardone Ventures. And I am blown away by the level of this guy's knowledge when it comes to scaling a business from 1 million to 10 million to 50 million to 100 million. Then I started meeting people that have been through kind of Brandon's trainings and have taken their business from $3 million a year revenue to $60 million a year. And like so many kind of success stories that you just at that point can't deny that, okay, this guy knows
what he's talking about.
His shit. And the thing is, he talks at such a high level, and then Grant comes on, and Grant, the information he's actually teaching from the stage is very, very basic stuff. And actually, I'm not going to discredit him. I'm not going to say he's not a great teacher, but he is just an entertainer. When he's up on the stage in the front of the room at this event of like 1,000 people in the room, he's just there. He just wants to make people laugh, and he just wants to make it entertaining. But that is also why he's been able to cultivate such a huge audience, because entertainment is just mass market. Everybody wants to be entertained, which is why Brandon, on the other hand, has always struggled to build the audience, because as smart as he is, it's not got the entertainment factor that Grant has.
Well, it's all it is like, can you capture attention? And if you can, how much attention can you capture? And then when you've captured it, how do I turn that attention into money?
Which Grant is a master of.
Which is the key. That's where most people fall down. They capture attention. They struggle turning attention into money.
Yeah.
That is the domino where most people don't knock it over. And it's the biggest domino of them all. But when you do master it, the way that you cannot help by looking at someone like Grant Cardone and think to yourself, mate, Uncle G,
literally,
like that's why, and that's another thing. The way he frames himself, he frames himself as Uncle G.
Yep.
Because then everyone's got an uncle.
Yep.
Right, and everyone's got a favourite uncle. So the reason he frames himself as Uncle G psychologically is because Uncle G is better than like father, or if you think of father and mother as figures, you don't want to listen to father and mothers, but you'll always listen to your uncle.
Very true. I've not thought about that.
No one thinks about that. That's why he framed it as that. It's all perception. He frames it like that so that everyone wants to work with their Uncle G.
And he plays the family card so well as well, especially online, but especially at the event. He'd bring his 2 little daughters up on stage, his wife up on stage, and you can't help but, like, the money aside, you're just inspired by how much of a family man he is and how amazing his kids are and his relationship is. And just on that last point about what you talked about, kind of like opportunity vehicles, or the vehicle to get to that level of wealth, or game selection in the context of poker, not only Grant has been amazing at building an audience, he's also picked the perfect vehicle to monetize that audience, which is real estate, which is almost not infinitely scalable, but you're not going to run out of real estate to buy. And
he sells off all his spin-off products as well, which is so he's built a whole suite of systems into doing this. But I think the key thing, what I've learned from that is that, and what I want you all to pick up on, is the fact of, like, Tyler's willing and open, even though he is successful at a very high level of the game, he's willing to go and sit with and go and say, okay, what is it I don't know?
Yeah.
And that's the key question. Is, okay, first question, what is it I don't know? Second question is, who fucking does know it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, okay. And then, okay, what am I missing? Okay, cool. I'll go there and you'll see, okay, I'm missing this, this, and this, and this. Now, that domino that rather, we can all throw hate and all throw shade on different people in our industries. I look at podcasters and some of them I'm like, fuck, but you're shit. But you're massive, but you're shit.
Yep.
They're not fucking shit, are they? That's my ego.
Yep. Right?
What is it I don't know then?
Yeah.
Because there's something I fucking don't know, because you're there and I'm here. So there's something I don't know. That's what we have to, we all have to remove that. That has to fuck off. And we have to kind of get real. And the real thing is, someone out there that, like Grant, that might the only thing that pisses you off is the fact that you're not there where he is. That's what a lot of people do. So they hate on you, but you can learn so much from investing in yourself like that, and that's what it is. And I think when you start to one of the biggest things I learned in life is question every fucking thing.
Yep.
Where did I get that fucking belief from?
Yeah.
And why has that been instilled in me? And what?
And do I really believe it?
Do I actually believe that? Because I walked past a school playground the other day, right? And there was these secondary school kids, and they're all out there just kicking a football together, all different colours, nationalities, and all this stuff, and there's no animosity there. And I'm thinking, so why is there problems in the world, man? Because nobody's taught you that.
Yeah.
Like, so where does that get taught? That gets taught at parental level, yeah? All the psychology of what everyone's dealing with, and all the limited psychology of everything you're dealing with, whether you like it or not, came from your home.
And you just need to reverse engineer where that belief came from, and whether it's a positive or it's a constructive belief or a destructive belief. And it takes a lot of self-awareness to do that.
I think the identity is key.
Yeah.
The identity is key, and being willing to look. Being willing to look at all your shadows, I'm always trying to ascertain what something triggered me earlier, right?
Okay.
In a situation I was facing in London. Something triggered me, and I reacted a certain way. And
what was it? Let's talk about it.
It was a wild situation. It triggered me, and I reacted, and I thought, I've seen this Frankie before, and this has something to do with fucking ego, bruv.
Yeah.
And you need to rein the fucker in. This was last night. I told you about it before the podcast, right?
We won't talk about that.
Yeah. And I thought, this is all down to ego. This is fucking all down to ego, mate. And you need to meditate. So I went and meditated, and I come out of the meditation, and I learned a little bit about myself.
Okay.
The point I'm trying to make, Tyler, and the point I want everyone to get who's listening to this podcast, is the fact of, like, you have to be willing to check yourself and ask yourself, I've seen this fucker before.
Yep.
And I don't really want to turn up as I don't really want to turn up as that guy again. I don't want to be that. So I'm going to put things in place that change it. And that's personal development. It's just being able to identify what's come from your childhood and what triggers are there, and try and, like, I think we just, essentially, Tyler, what I'm saying is, I think we're all going through like a remote with a load of buttons, and we want to take all the buttons off so that people can't fucking press them. Because the less buttons that you have on your remote control that people can press and get a reaction out of you, that's already pre-programmed in you, the fucking better.
I love that. So true. And and I saw that firsthand. Like I said, when I went out to Grant Cardone, I had all these DMs of people saying, why would you go and learn from him? He's a fraud, he's a charlatan. And I'd just be like, you really think you couldn't learn one thing from this guy? And ego is probably the thing that gets in the way of most people's growth and personal development. Think, I don't need to pay for people to learn from them, or they must be a scammer, they must be a fraud if they're selling their knowledge with information. But yeah.
I had a big beef years ago, and this was all around my own limiting beliefs of, like, I'd bought a lot of knowledge from a lot of people, courses and this and that, and I saw the value in it. But then I used to resent some people for selling their knowledge because of how much money they were making and stuff like that. And there was a resentment issue, because I thought to myself, and Joseph Valente said to me on the other podcast the other day, he's like, he did this and he did this, and then he had a successful podcast, and then he started selling a podcasting course. And I'm like, what Joe did, which is, so he doesn't let anyone limit his fucking thinking. He just goes, well, I've had a successful podcast, so I'll start selling a podcast course then. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. Like, and it's just, that is beautiful, because that's raw entrepreneurship. It's having that essence of, like, no, I have value to give here, so I'll just give it, and I think I can package it into something that's saleable. And I think everyone that listens to this has something that they can package in the way that you've packaged your real estate stuff that you should sell. And I think the online education business, I think it was Alex Hormozy was saying, was going to grow by billions and billions and billions. It's one of the fastest growing spaces, online education.
And it's just replacing traditional education, because traditional education, i.e. the school system and the higher education system of universities, is just so broken.
Break down then for me, because I'm trying to figure this out for myself, is like minimum viable product in terms of because I believe in the minimum viable product, because I presume, knowing how much of a G you are, I presume you sold it before you built it.
No, we didn't.
Right, okay. Walk me through that.
But on retrospect, we should have. I think the proof of concept we had, actually, that was Rosie back then was already consulting and selling the same information for free. It's just we're productizing it differently. But we sold it before we finished it. I think about 50%, once the product was about 50% finished.
Yeah.
And we said, right, okay, we've spent like months. It was such a slow and convoluted way that we decided to build it. We wanted to pack it with detail and information, make sure we hadn't missed anything. And about 50%, it was like, you know what, let's just see what the uptake is. Let's see what the feedback is before we spend even more time and money building out the remaining part of the program. So, should have sold it before we'd even started. And I'll tell you why, actually, for those listening. We've recently, and it was just out of demand, Rosie and I had various students that just wanted some more one-on-one with us. They just wanted one-on-one. And we were like, we don't want to do one-on-one. We don't really want to be selling our time for money. We've kind of created this content portal, and we've got the live group calls and whatnot. And you can message us on the communication channel that we have. But times I went on, but they're like, well, they'll pay what it's worth, because property development, the outcome that you're essentially selling is very valuable. If someone can go and do their first development or a bigger development, the money they're going to make is life-changing. And it's also why we only work with very select people, because this is like a career change. This isn't like a little side hustle we're teaching you to start. This is where you need to throw everything at it, and it's going to require a lot of time and effort and sacrifice. But we decided to just do some one-on-one with a few people, and by doing the one-on-one, we've actually learned more about how we can help people than we'd ever known before.
Yeah.
And now we had a few conversations with a few people on the one-on-one side of things.
You've seen white space where there was no white space before.
Exactly. And we're like, we should have been teaching this way the whole way around, because this is where people are getting confused, or they're not taking the right amount of action, or the mistakes that they're making. So, yeah, a valuable lesson.
I keep referring back to him, but he's an absolute wizard. But Hormozi, Alex Hormozi, was saying that even when he was doing millions and millions and millions in sales from his sales guys at his business, at his gym launch business, he said he still took sales calls because he still wanted to stay close enough to the customer so he could see where the white spaces were. So it's similar to what you're saying. It's like the further you get away from the client and delivering. I know you're still property developing over here, so you're not getting away from that. But the further you get away from the educational client and what their needs are, you can't exactly see which components they're struggling with and where these opportunities are. And if you just take on like one or two a month, it just gives you that opportunity to keep the finger on the pulse, to be able to say, okay, I see this now. So that this part of permitted development or whatever, or this part of rear development we need a unit on that, because there's an opportunity there, or there's another course spin-off there. It just gives you've always got to stay close to with your nose to the window, so to speak, of what you're actually doing, so you can actually give some insights and pivots in there.
Very true.
I think that's something I think both of us here have missed out on it in things, sure. But I think we can refer back to that. But mate, in regards to moving forward for you and everything you're scaling now, obviously we're sat in the most beautiful location in London. I mean, looking now, we've got Big Ben out the front here. I mean, I said to you at the start of this podcast in the kitchen, everything happens twice. It's once created in the mind, and then it's created in reality. How have you, I know you've done it through property development, I get it wholeheartedly, I get it. But how have you created this vision for yourself and brought yourself into this level of living? So it's a funny story about this apartment, actually. Back at the moment when I'd moved to London, North London, things didn't go too well, moved back home. I've still got the documents somewhere on my old laptop. It was like, okay, what do I want? And I remember just opening up a Google Doc and just writing, like, what does a perfect version of my life look like? And it was like, what, not only the business, but what clothes do I wear? What restaurants do I go to? Who do I hang around with? Where do I live? But then also the minor details. So part of the document was, and I wrote this like when I was like, I don't know what I'm doing next. A friend of mine that I'd followed on social media for quite a while lived in the building just next door
to here, actually. It's all part of the same development, built by the same developer, but it's a different architecture, different building. But same views across the river here with all the landmarks in the background. And I was like, okay, well, I'd love to live there. For me, living in London with a beautiful view, I'm a sucker for views. I want to live there. And that was part of it. So I was like, I want to live in this building that's called this. I want to have I want to be able to wake up each morning, go down to my spa where there's a sauna and a steam room and whatnot downstairs, and then I want to sit at work at my desk overlooking the river with a brand new, fully spec'd MacBook and a 34-inch curved LG widescreen. I want to have a Lamborghini Huracan in the garage downstairs, and I want to be able to surround myself with like-minded individuals and go to these restaurants. And then I think 18 months later, like, it was a reality, and I'd completely forgotten about the document until I remembered it, and I pulled it up, and it was literally word for word. And it's because I was obsessed about it. It was not because I didn't read the document and then just forget about it. I write the document and then forget about it. I was like, that was generally what I really wanted. That was the life, that was the vision I had. And I mean, I've got the MacBook here, the screen, I've got the apartment overlooking the river. I don't have the car now, but I had the car. I got that out of my system. And for me, it was just a question of when, not if. I know that's quite cliche, but it was just an obsession that I had. And then the real learning curve came once you'd achieved it, and then suddenly you have to question, well, what's my compelling vision of the future now? What do I want next? The materialistic stuff I've ticked off. I've got the car and the roof over my head that I wanted, and the income that I need to kind of live a life where I can sort of go to the places I want to do and hang out with the people I want to hang out with and travel wherever. And then suddenly your motivation has to change, because constantly wanting more and more materialistic stuff is only just going to end one way. It's just, you're never going to be happy. But yeah, and that was probably the biggest learning curve that I had over the last couple of years. Is like, fuck, I need to really reevaluate.
When you wrote that document, you're obviously visioning. You're obviously visioning what your life looks like. So you can. One of the most important things that Joe Dispenza talks about, and I'm going to see him this week for this meditation retreat that I'm going on. One of the things he talks about is the most important thing is to feel like you've already got it.
Okay.
Do you when you think back to writing that document, did you ever at any point feel like you already had it? Can I
tell you an even better example? And I'll get my phone for this one. You may or may not have seen this. Have you ever seen the tweet that I put out?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to go on my Twitter. I'm going to have to scroll back a little bit, but I'll find it. So, I mean, it sounds of course it's materialistic, but one of the biggest goals that I ever had was I wanted a Lamborghini. And it all stemmed from, I remember I was like one of these kids that was kind of into cars, but didn't really know much about cars. And then in year 11 it was at school, I was sat in IT, the computer class, next to my friend, who I'm actually still friends with, and I'm seeing him later this week. And we had to do this project. We had to build out a slideshow or some animation about a particular topic. I chose cars. And so one of the lessons is you just go research all the resources you want. And so I just can't remember what I typed into YouTube, but it pulled up a Top Gear clip of Richard Hammond driving what was at the time the new Lamborghini Aventador. And I didn't even know what a Lamborghini Aventador looked like until that video. And I watched that, and something just, like any kid seeing a Lamborghini for the first time, you just have this like, oh my God, that is the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. It's like a fighter jet on wheels. And I was like, I need one of those at some point in my life. And I just fell in love with cars and just became obsessed. And then once I got a taste for entrepreneurship and starting a business and doing all the self-development stuff and learning about goal setting, I could tell you a few examples of this actually. One of them was, so the main one was I wanted a Lamborghini. So I'd be in my first car, which was a 2003 Volkswagen Golf. So it was like 13, 14 years old. I bought it for like a couple grand, had 120,000 miles on the clock. It was manual, didn't even have it was just a cassette player. And I'm not old enough where I had cassettes, so couldn't listen to any music or it was in my earphones. But I would drive round imagining I'm in a Lamborghini. I'll drive this country roads to school, and I'm like, wow, how good would it feel to drive this car through here? And so if I find the tweet, so there was a point where, here we go. So on the 12th of December 2014, I tweeted,
my next tweet will be when I have a Lamborghini.
My next tweet will be a pic of my Lamborghini. And then 6 years later, I put done at 23, success Israeli in accident. And that was the 14th of July 2020. Just probably like
that is amazing. I'm going to show that to the cameras there. I hope you can see that. And that all of you, I'll show all the cameras just to make sure that we get it on all the cameras. But that's mad, mate. That's mad. I don't think I've seen this tweet.
I'm almost a little bit embarrassed because I know, one, how cocky it is to tweet that, and two, how kind of superficial it is to have that goal. But it's just a perfect example of what we've talked about.
My next tweet will be a pic of my Lamborghini. That is mad, mate. That is mad.
And it was just obsession. It was just like, that's
relentless. I might write that tweet tonight. Do you know what I'm saying? But it just goes to show you. So the essence of that was like, there was a lot of feeling in that. Like, and I think you have to. I really believe that you have to feel what you vision, and I think that's the difference between it coming into your life or staying away from you. I think it's the one piece that most people miss out on when it comes to this visualization. And
that is what I feel like I've actually lacked over the last couple of years until recently, where I really realized, like, I think back to those times where I had all this conviction and this belief and this feeling that this is a life I want, and this is, an inevitability for me. Once I kind of achieved a couple of the materialistic things and ticked off kind of that side of things, I really had to then feel like I haven't got that feeling now for whatever's next, and it's only something I've worked on kind of over the last 6 months. It's like, okay, what is my compelling vision for the future now? What is it that I really, really want, and have that same feeling deeply rooted in me? So,
as a young multimillionaire, though, how do you keep yourself, from your perspective, constantly evolving?
Like we've talked about, just constantly learning, and just being able to have the self-awareness to sit with your own thoughts and have the uncomfortable conversations with yourself and think more about, what are my belief systems that are serving me? What are my belief systems that aren't serving me?
Give me an example of some of the belief systems that you've dug out of your system, like in the last 12 months, that haven't been serving you.
I think of some examples. One of them is, so the biggest thing, the biggest trap you can fall into is complacency. And it was like, if I'm earning X amount of money, I'm doing really, really well. And this is more about raising your standards. But it's like, I need to stop thinking that this kind of money or this level of wealth is enough, because once you're making that kind of money, you feel like, oh, okay, I'm comfortable, and then you lose that drive to push higher. So it's like, right, I need to believe that I need to be earning, or I want to be making this, or I want to be achieving this. So maybe that's not a perfect example of a belief system.
It is in essence, because what you're saying is, you don't, as a young man, you don't want to get to a certain level of earning capacity and then think to yourself, oh, I've made it.
So that was the belief system.
Because it's like, if this is what you can achieve at this age, okay, now you should think to yourself, oh, now I'm fucking excited there, because now I've got a 30-year run left in me.
Very true.
I got a 30-year run left in me. Like, it would fizz me up walking out here every day, looking at this apartment, thinking, fuck me, if this is what I can achieve by this age, imagine what the fuck I can achieve then by this. And because I'm playing long-term games here, I'm in the same game. I just got to scale the game I'm in. Mm-hmm. So that's the way I would use this. And I suppose that's the way I've used my apartment in the Gold Coast. Mm-hmm. Similar to you, yes, I rent it, but you have to be in a position to be able to afford the fucking rent on the thing.
For sure.
Do you know what I'm saying, right? Mm-hmm. So when I'm sat there and I'm looking out at the view and the view's fucking abundant, I'm like, this was I visioned that too. That life,
Yeah.
I visioned that from when I was a kid in Australia. I don't know, a geography trip geography lesson back in 2015 when I'd done the homework. Someone presented the Gold Coast, changed my fucking life.
No way.
Serious, bro. Like, it's mad. I sat at the back of the class with Kamal Danji at the time. He'll tell you about it. And I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, mate, I'm gonna fucking live there.
Love that.
Mad how it all happened.
And at that point, how much did you really believe that was going to be?
Well, I was absolute on everything.
Yeah.
And one thing about, it's like when I started this podcast, right? I recorded the first episode of this podcast, no word of a fucking lie, on a laptop sat in the spare room.
Okay.
I recorded it. It was like 20 minutes long. It's called my 2020 vision. It's still on the podcast, right? It's still on the podcast. I recorded that episode. I walked up to the kitchen where my dad was, and I'm glad I said it to my dad, because my mum's a more safer person. Mm-hmm. You should never say things. You should never tell your goals to safe people, because they'll always tell you to be careful. And when someone says be careful to you, if you're weak-minded in that moment, you take that energy on and it shuts down your thinking. So never ever fucking say anything to anyone who plays safe.
Very
right?
true. Yeah.
Never give your goals away to someone who plays safe. I went out to the kitchen. Fucking lucky it was my dad, I swear down. I fucking thank God every day. It was fucking not God, because I'm not religious, but I believe in a higher thing. But anyway, I got up to the kitchen. I said, Dad, I've just found my purpose. I've just found what I'm meant to do. Right? He went, what do you mean? I went, I'm going to be one of the best podcasters ever lived. I'm going to absolutely send it. He goes, no word of a lie. His words to me were, that sounds right up your alley. You should do that. And I went, yeah, I should. And that was it. And then I went on the path.
Amazing.
If I'd said that to me mum, and I love her to bits, but if I'd said that to me mum, she would have said, that sounds risky. And I'm now all of a sudden I'm fucking questioning it. I'm questioning it. And that's the difference. You should never say, when you have conviction. I had fucking conviction at that point. Conviction.
You can't break it.
You cannot break fucking conviction. And I am so determined, so absolute on what I expect this podcast to do and where it's fucking going. And I won't ever let anyone fucking lower that energy. And I build a wall around it. And I'm just so glad that I said it to the right person. And really, if I'm honest with you, you shouldn't say it to anyone. You should just be absolute in your own mind. But I was just lucky that I said it to my dad.
That's so true. I've never thought about that. I understand sometimes as well when you share goals with people, are you really sharing it? What is the reason you're sharing the goals? Is it because you want the validation? And there's sometimes this trap mentally when you kind of say, oh, I want to do X. You're saying it because you get that dopamine hit when you say it, which kind of fulfills almost that desire. But it should be...
The most important thing you can understand is saying it is not the fucking achievement. Saying it isn't the achievement.
No one cares.
No one gives a fuck about what you're doing, how you're doing it, if you're successful or not. The only time people care is when you've got something that they haven't got, or when you're achieving some level of status that they've not got and they want, and they can hate on you. That's the only time. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that's it. You have to get yourself round. And Andrew Tate at the moment is fucking exploding. But he says some really good stuff in amongst all the stuff that he says, but which is designed to trigger you.
Of course.
And he's a great marketer at doing that. But he says the earlier men or women, same, can get together as a group of like 5, 6, 10, and say to each other, right, we all want success, we all want the same thing, we're not going to fuck each other over, we're just going to go together and we're just all going to fucking support each other and fucking move forward, the better it gets. It's like it's no coincidence that you go to Marbella and who's fucking in the house? You've got Jimmy from Hair, who set up fucking Hairburst. You've got all the other boys that set up mad businesses. You've got 150 million pound plus businesses in the fucking room with you. It's no fucking coincidence that you are exactly what you're surrounded by. No coincidence at all. And it's just about the key things I want you to take away from that fucking rant I've just been on is the fact of, like, be careful who you tell your deepest convictions to, because they could potentially, if you're weak-minded, make you challenge your conviction, as in like, can I do that? Can I do that? And then now all of a sudden you're not in the absolute stage. And it's only in the absolute stage that you can go and create that abundance and create the vision, which is what you've done here, because you were absolute about it. You were absolute. When you were driving down that fucking country road in that fucking Polo, with 120k on the clock, you're driving down there. It didn't matter. You felt like it.
Yeah.
And you were absolute about it. And it's the absoluteness that's created. 100%, mate.
Very true. Very true. I need to reflect on that more, I think, and instill that feeling back into my life.
Because some of the feeling I get from you is that you don't feel like you've achieved enough.
There's this weird conflict that I get. Almost, I don't want to say the word imposter syndrome, because I know imposter syndrome is silly, but when I come on podcasts like this and I tell my story, because I'm so infatuated with what's about to happen in the future and what I haven't achieved yet, to me, I feel like I'm still at level 1 of a level 200 journey where I've got 199 levels still to push through. And so it feels weird sharing kind of my story, my insights of what I learned so far, because I feel like, fuck, I've got so much further to go. But that comes with the transition I kind of made mentally over the last year or two of just thinking longer term games, because it's only probably about 12 or 18 months ago that I think, fuck, this is what I want to do for the next however many decades of my life. And then as soon as I made that decision, it's like, well...
The game's changed, right?
The game's changed because, I'm 25 now. I'm not going to be... I've got 30 years until I'm 55. What can I achieve over 30 years? Like 30 years is a very, very long time. And so with that, it's like, if I have a shit week, fuck it. I've got 30 years left to play this game. And yeah... That's probably why I come across. No,
because there's two reasons why I say it, and Patrick Bet-David said this. It's like when he achieves a certain level of deals, he's in like life, not life insurance, some form of insurance. His insurance is in America, and he's got a successful YouTube channel called Valuetainment.
Yeah,
but he was saying when he hits certain goals on YouTube, he'll take a month off and he'll just sit with it. And he will celebrate it and cement that level of success into his life.
Okay.
Right? And I'm just saying, like, maybe you need to take maybe a week or take 5 days and just celebrate it. And here I am. I fucking deserve this. I've fucking won. Cool. Celebrate. You don't need to fucking live there, but definitely celebrate it, and don't ever feel any form of imposter syndrome, because you don't need to feel it, because if you feel anything like the word imposter or any of these things, they're all low vibrational words. Sure. Low vibration attracts low vibration, right? So you know, even by mentioning these names, you're bringing a lower vibration around you, and you're allowing yourself to question what shouldn't be questioned, when you should be. When the proof is you live this life. You've generated this much, you've done this thing. It's like, well, fuck me. Well, let's just celebrate it, cement it, and then go and fucking boom, 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 and achieve it. Well, I just think question absolutely everything.
Very true. Very true. I had this conversation on my friend Matt's podcast a couple nights ago.
Are you back on Matt's podcast?
Yeah, I did another episode with him a few days ago. So recently, for the Cambridgeshire deal that we talked about earlier, I've just had the first CGIs come through of the site showing the homes, because up until now, when we go to the site, it is just a grass field, and so it's like, I've just bought a field, and then the only kind of designs we've seen are just 2-dimensional that the architects have kind of drawn. But then seeing these, they're on my Instagram, these beautiful, like, photorealistic CGIs of what this site is going to look like, it was like a pinch me moment where I was like, if I used to show this to my 18-year-old self, who was just failing to even find his first property deal, I'd be like, no way, that I couldn't. And like, this is the shit that I dream of. But yeah, when you're so aggressively trying to get to the next level, I am guilty, and I think a lot of people are, of just failing to recognize, wow. Yeah. And the quote I keep coming back to is, you have to remember that time where you dreamed about everything you have now.
Well, it's like the building blocks of achieving the next level are grounded in gratitude.
Say that again.
The building blocks of achieving the next level in your life are going to be grounded by gratitude.
I like that.
And I've just literally thought of that, and that's no one else's quote. I swear down.
Yeah,
I swear down. I
Love
just literally thought of it. So if anyone else nicks that, you're a motherfucker. But do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
that is literally what I just thought right then and there.
I'm going to tweet that quickly before.
I can't even remember what I just said, to be honest. But like, I just think, yeah, when you ground in the gratitude of what you've got and what you've achieved, you can go and ascend and achieve what you need to go and do.
For sure.
But it's all about, you will have to come back to self. And it's like, if you're going to be one of these people that's constantly self-developing, like we both are, and we both like to question everything. It's like, why wouldn't you question why you feel some form of imposter syndrome over here for this and this and this?
Yeah.
Because it's just, as soon as you, because I guarantee you this, Tyler, right? I guarantee you what you think the reason is of why you feel that way isn't the reason. Because when you do, you've heard of the 5 whys, right? So you say to yourself, okay, why do I feel imposter syndrome? And then you answer it. Okay,
then you go a layer deeper.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Once you get to the 5th why, now you're starting to get to the real shit. If you don't lie to yourself and you keep answering that question, why, you get to the subconscious belief. And then when you get to the subconscious belief, if you can change the subconscious belief, which is like 98% of the whole fucking game, if you can change the subconscious part of that belief, now you can change the conscious part of your life, because now you took it out your deeper subconscious mind.
Very true. I've heard Dean Graziosi talk about that actually, but I've never done that exercise, and I can imagine each layer deeper that you go, it's going to get harder and harder to answer the question. But
well, imposter syndrome, because you mentioned
sure,
you mentioned imposter syndrome. You just be that showing up in your life showed up in your life in this conversation, right? Mm-hmm. But that showed up in other areas of your life in the past that you've probably forgotten. Yeah, that probably came from deeper stemming moments. You know, you could have felt you could feel imposter syndrome now, for argument's sake, based on what you've got and what you've generated in your life, which is vastly successful. Mm-hmm. But that could stem from you getting rejected by a girl at school for a date, like, and you don't know about it. And this is where most entrepreneurial people go wrong, because they look at the word imposter, they look at anything that they're feeling, and they try and address the feeling. And I'm saying, fuck the feeling. What's the cause? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's the cause that no one goes into.
Yeah.
And I like to question not only the feeling, but where does that actually fucking come from? Where's it deep rooted into? Because when you can get to the deep rooted problem, you can solve it. And it's like what I call the biggest domino. Knock the biggest domino over subconsciously as to what the true issue is. Now you can change the rest of your life, and you can grow through and accentuate and move forward. And mate, I'll tell you what, when you do it, you'll fucking call me and you'll be like, do you know what, Frankie boy? You're not such a bald bastard after all.
I feel like I'm at a therapy session.
No, I'm just saying.
No, I totally agree.
I only say that to you because I know that me and you have the relationship where I can push.
Yeah,
like,
please.
And because I want you to win, mate. Like, you've already winning, but I want you to know that you're winning and to win more. So it's like, well, fucking, it's just something that changed my life when I learnt that, because I was always addressing the exterior or surface level shit when I didn't address the things. And I tell you where it manifested in my life. It manifested around women, because I was attracting a certain type of woman and a certain type of relationship because I felt unloved by my mum. And the reason I felt unloved by my mum at the time was a bullshit reason, but until I uncovered it and then put it to bed and got over it and did something over it, I was going to continue on the same pattern and asking myself, why is this happening to me? Yeah, and it's just that because I went in a few whys deep and I sought some help on going into that depth to get that information out. But when you pull that information out, it frees you, because now you're like, oh, okay, what a silly fucker. Now I can fucking move forward. You can't move forward when you don't know what you're looking at. And you also can't move forward when you're looking at the wrong thing.
And that's sometimes where you need somebody else to help you find
perspective, mate. Perspective. And I think that's the beautiful thing about your whole journey, is the fact that you've always seeked other people's perspectives of it. What do I not know, so I can go and ascend in this property development game, in this rear development, in this fucking, I don't know this. Okay, what is it I don't know? Why am I love that. That is a part of your skill level that you've nailed in every area of your life. And this is no different. This is like no different.
Very true. Very true.
But yeah, don't quote me.
You're gonna invoice me for the therapy session.
No, I just like to. I feel like it adds a lot of value to the guys listening to this, because I don't know if any of you guys have ever felt this, and I don't know if you've ever felt this, Tyler. It's like at some points in your life you feel unworthy in certain areas, right? And that unworthiness you should seek to uncover it so that it doesn't keep compounding, because everything compounds, right? I mean, let's just look back at you and what you're doing. When you started, after a few deals, did things start to compound in a way that became more and more financially freeing for you?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Before you know it, you've got 6 figures in the bank account, and your friends at still at university, counting the pennies, figuring out their budget for the week. And yeah, you feel, well, 1, ego steps in, but then 2, there is that element of, do I really deserve this? And that never actually became an overwhelming belief for me. Obviously the question pops into your head time to time, but I've always kind of had the self-confidence that, I've spent the time learning, I've done the work.
How do you
I deserve what I have?
How do you you do deserve what you have. You 100% fucking do deserve what you have. How do you differentiate between good and bad ego? How have you differentiated between that? Because I think because you need ego.
You 100% need ego. It what drives us to do what we do, right? How do you differentiate between good and bad ego?
I'm hitting you with questions today.
It's a deep one. It's just a simple answer would probably be just have to question: is this belief serving me, and does it align with my bigger mission? And is it a hurdle? Is it getting in the way? And the answer can be yes or no. But what do you think?
I ask myself when I want something, or I ask myself, is this genuinely for me? Or is this to prove something to someone I don't need to prove it to? Because in my life up until the age of 29 was a fucking dick swinging competition. It was like, I can do this, I've done this, I was a world boxing trainer, fuck it, it's all just mate, not worth a wank in the wind. All predicated on trying to prove something to someone that didn't matter, someone who didn't even exist. It was just like an alter ego of, do you know what I'm saying? I always question now, like this podcast, I do this podcast first and foremost because I fucking love it, right? I fucking love it. It lights
and
me.
I can feel that even off air before this, I can tell this is your art, and this is where you feel like most in your art and most alive. It
lights me up because I get to meet and converse with people like yourself, and I get to share that with the world. I have a few rules with podcasting. One rule is this. One, I have to enjoy it, so I have to talk to people that I want to fucking talk to. I don't let anyone tell me who I'm talking to. I talk to who I want to fucking talk to, and I book who I want to book. The second thing is, like, when I have the genuine conversations that I want to have, and when I talk to people, as a byproduct of that, it usually, hopefully, adds value to people that are listening, and in a lot of cases, from the messages that I've had, changed a few fucking thousand lives along the way. And that lights me up. And that's 2 things. As long as I'm doing that, I'm fucking happy. But it's for the right reason. But the first reason it always has to be for, from my personal experience, is it has to be for you. Because if it's not for you, first and foremost, in a selfish way, not even in a selfish way, I'll take that back, not even in a selfish way, but it has to be for you first. Because if it serves you, and allows you then to serve others, as in it serves you, so your business serves you in terms of cash flow, but it serves others in terms of value in the marketplace, right? When it does those two things, then it can coexist and it can move forward. It can't without those two things, because if I was just doing this for others, right, without serving myself first, I would burn out, wouldn't I? That's why most podcasts fall off, because it's either to serve their serve their purpose completely and doesn't serve the audience, or it serves the audience and doesn't serve them. And that's what that's from my side of the coin. That's kind of what it is to me.
So what was the moment then, you say up until like you were 29 or whatever, that everything was purely, well, ego driven? What was that moment? What was that switch where it all changed?
The moment for me, I'll tell you this. It's a fucking hard story to tell this, but
have you told this before?
Yeah, I have, but I don't know if I've been in this depth.
Okay.
I set myself a goal when I knew I wasn't good enough at boxing to be a professional boxer. I thought, I know I'll be a professional boxing trainer, because then I can be around boxing, and I can do it at a high level, and I can prove my worth that I didn't need to prove to anybody, to this imaginary worth proving person, right? Yeah, right. Yeah. So then I pursued this. I chased it for 5 years. 5 years later, it's now 2017, December 2017. So it might have been before I was 29. So it probably was 20. Yeah, probably December 2017. It probably was 29. Anyway, Jeff Horn, Gary Cochran. I'm in Jeff Horn's corner with Frank Greaves, walking out. Michael Buffer, 14,000 people, stadium full of people. Blah, 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 blah. This is the epitome of what I've dreamed. I'm now walking out for a world title fight. Michael Buffer, 4 different channels, US, UK, blah, 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 blah. Everything. I've fucking dreamt of this moment. I'm stood there next to Michael Buffer, and he's introducing the two fighters, and we're stood in the middle of the ring at this point. I'm stood there, and I'm looking out, and it's fucking 14,000 people, bro. And the words that I thought in my head was, fuck me, bro, you've leant your ladder against the wrong fucking wall. Because this is not you, man. This is I'm going to say some words now, and you'll realise why they hit me so hard. So I thought that, and then I thought, I feel dead inside. I feel like a part of me has died. We walk out the ring. We go back to the fight goes on. We had to pull him out with cuts in the 10th or 11th round. He's lost the fight. We're walking back to the changing rooms. I get back to the changing rooms. I think to myself, who should I call? I don't know. I feel fucking terrible. Like, I don't know. Suicidal would be a fucking bad way to put it. But I felt fucking empty. And I've never felt so empty in my entire life. I've never felt like cold sweats and horrible like I felt at the time ever in the history of mankind. But I just knew something wasn't right, yeah? I'm in there. I goes outside the change room. I thought, my relationship with my mum is, my mum's always loved me unconditionally, but I never saw it. And I hadn't repaired my relationship with my mum in how I thought about her feeling towards me and all that stuff at this point. But I thought, I just have to call her. So I called my mum and I couldn't get through, and I'm ringing her and I'm thinking to myself, fucking anyway, she calls me. And we started having this conversation, and then she says to me about Rocco. And Rocco was my sister's son. And at about the time the fight started, his fight started. And what I mean was, in the moment that I was in the moment while I'd been thinking in that corner that everything about my life had died inside, and that I'd leant my ladder against the wrong wall, and I felt everything that I said, and I felt dead inside. Rocco had gone to hospital. They'd found a hole in his heart, but they didn't. He'd gone to hospital, and bearing in mind this kid's not even 6 months old, and he died for 12 minutes. He's died for 12 minutes while I've been in that boxing ring saying, and I've thought the words dead inside, and they managed to rush him to Cambridge and then on to London to resuscitate and recover him. And I don't know what it was, and obviously he's recovered and he's a healthy boy now. I don't know what it was about that situation and how it all came about and how the energy all moved that night. But that night I realised two things. One, life is too fucking short to chase things just to prove a point to other people. That was the first thing I learned. The second thing I learned was life is so short that you should 100% go into whatever lights you up and fully, relentlessly pursue it, but also be present while you're doing it. Because I was never present with my family. I wasn't present in anything. It was all to do with proving a point. Mm-hmm. And that, from that moment on, my whole life kind of changed because of how much that deeply affected me and deeply shifted me. And I do believe in energy, and I do believe in the universe, and I do believe it does things to do you. And I think it was I believe the universe or this greater thing gives you warnings in life, and it gives you warnings in life to say you are going offline of what you should be pursuing in life. How's about you get back on it? Here's a warning. I think if I look back, I'd ignored, Tyler, a few warnings along the way. Mm-hmm. to this happening, and then I got this big fucking wake up call.
Wow.
And that I've never spoken that depth about before.
How long ago was that?
December 2017.
Wow, so almost 5 years.
Yeah. And that was pivotal because when I realised from my personal self that this wasn't right to pursue, it's then I started to things started to be put into place to be able to pursue something else. But I say that happened in December 2017. I didn't start the podcast till like 19 or 20. Because there's so many things in your life that have to change. Once you've learnt your ladder against the wrong wall, you don't just fucking boom, all of a sudden find it. No, you have to go in the pursuit of trying things. Because when you try things, you can now find out what works for you. But Gary Vaynerchuk says it. You have to be willing to try. When you're willing to try, you can taste a lot of different things, and then you can see what works for you. And I'm just glad I found this, because this is what lights me up. And I've never been so happy and purpose driven in my entire life. And even though I've never made a cent out of the podcast, I've turned down fucking shit ad deals because people want people to pump shit to people. I just won't do it. Mm-hmm. But I know I'm on the right path, and I know that the content that I can help put in people's ears by getting people like yourself on, I know that can deeply change people's lives. And it can actually save people's lives, because there might be someone listening to this right now who's got to this point and be like, do you know what, I wanted to give it all up. I didn't think there was nothing left for me. But, something Tyler said, something Frankie said, something I heard on this podcast might just fucking change the direction of their life forever. And that means something to me. And that's why I do it, mate.
So if you could, who you are now, go back and have a conversation with yourself 5 years ago, having just been through that kind of that moment, whether it was a breakthrough moment or whatever, what would you say?
Be kinder to yourself. Be kinder to yourself and watch your fucking language.
Yeah.
And when I say that and I swear in it, I don't mean actually watch your language in terms of like swearing, even though I do think, and I'm trying to get better at that myself. Watch your language in terms of your I am statements, you know?
Yeah.
Because they can compound either way.
Language patterns that you
use that disempower your growth. You know, you can tell yourself a story of what you're not, or you can tell yourself a story of what you're going to become. And I would ultimately always try and create my future than try and dwell on my past. So powerful.
Love that. Yeah, I love that.
But yeah, anyway, I've never been in that depth on that. But that's why.
It's a beautiful story.
That's why I'm so fucking. That's why it's not even about like downloads or viewers or all this shit. It's like, no. I know I'm on the right path. It'll all come. Don't have to worry about all this bollocks. It's like, no. Go and have the conversation with Tyler because you want to have the conversation with Tyler. And by the way, record it because there might be some value in there for other people. And that's it. Because I was going to have the conversation with you anyway, right?
We were almost having it before we started recording.
Yeah. It's just mad, mate. But like, if there was some golden pieces of wisdom that Tyler Newman could drop on the world, and you know, you can't take your real estate with you, you can't take your money with you, you can't even leave your course, nothing. But you could just leave a little bit of what you've learned, the essence you've learned in your 25 years at a high level of the game. What would it be?
One that we've spoken about has just been live a life of constant and never-ending learning and improvement and getting yourself into rooms of people that are far ahead of you. Second thing would probably be think bigger. I believe one of the biggest bottlenecks on people's growth is not it's their inability to think bigger. And that can stem from just being not aware or exposed to kind of what is at the next level. And I mean, a pivotal moment for me, we spoke about Eman before this. Who you've had on, you interviewed or had a podcast chat with yesterday.
Eman Gadzi.
This was when I sort of moved back home in that transitional phase of my life where I had connected with Eman. He was, I want to say, probably like 18, 19 at the time. He was kind of pulling in 7 figures a year with his business, and he's a bright guy. And like, when I say bright, his mind is incredible. But, you know, he invited me to kind of a house gathering, kind of few drinks. We went out to the club afterwards, and I met for the first time loads of people. 2 of them are my best friends now. And they just started telling me about kind of the numbers that they were doing in their business. Not like as a dick swinging contest, but because everyone there was playing at such high level, it doesn't become a dick swinging contest. It's just more like...
It's a safe space.
It's a safe space. And so, you know, one of them was telling me, yeah, you know, we're on track to do like 350 grand this month. I was like, what do you mean this month? And then another one was like, yeah, we're like doing it 200k. So like one guy's like, yeah, I just sold my business for like a few million quid. He was like 23 years old. And that for me, in my mind, before that moment was like, that wasn't even a possibility. And all of these goals that I'd set myself prior to that moment, I was thinking too small. Although, I wanted to like, you know, the nice car, the nice apartment. Those goals were set with like this apartment and the lifestyle and whatnot was set after that moment. And for me, a lot of the bigger goals, like when I was much younger, my late teens, wanting to get like the supercar, for example, and whatever. Like for me, that was like, oh, maybe when I'm like in my late 20s or whatever. But just being exposed to people that are far ahead of you and just opening up your mind to the fact that there is a much bigger game out there. And I've only been exposed to a certain level. Like, I've hung around a few billionaires and I've kind of just had a glimpse of kind of how they live. But I'm well aware there's levels to life that I'm not even aware of yet. And so the second piece of wisdom is definitely think bigger. and force yourself to think bigger, and get in rooms and around people that will force you to think bigger. And with that, believe that you can do it. If one man can do it, so can you. Or if one woman can do it, so can you. And I believe that with anything. And when I looked at kind of like that moment I talked to where I kind of met my friends that night in E-Man and saw these guys that were kind of like similar age to me but playing at a much higher level, I didn't have that negative self-talk or that language pattern. It was like, oh, I could never do that. It was like, well, if they can do it, I can do it, surely. Like, what do they have? We've all got access to the same resources. We've all got access to the same internet. And so, yeah, think bigger and believe that you can do it. And then, thirdly, would probably just be to just give without the expectation of return. And just the more value you can give out, you'll attract...
You attract the right people onto the bus.
Yeah, you'll attract everything. You'll attract the people, the money, whatever. But just give and look to provide value to the world. And maybe lastly, just surround yourself with winners. Like that's the one thing I love the most. Like my guy friends, when we go out for dinner, like they're just all fucking G's.
And winners question each other.
And they hold each other account, and they call each other out on their shit.
Yeah,
which is what I love about these boys. Because as much as we're all killing it, we're not afraid to call each other out sometimes.
Well, you know, when you're around someone else who also wants you to win, they will call you out because they're like, yeah, you've achieved great things, but you could do so much more if you answer this shadow or do this or plug this piece in or this and the other. And that's the beautiful thing. And it's such a positive environment to be around, you know, and there's no backstabbing and all this kind of stuff. It's like, as you raise your energy, your whole life changes. It's all about raising you, because what a lot of people don't understand about money is energy. And when you raise your vibration, you can attract more money into your life. It's like you use invariably a lot of other people's money, right? To leverage. You still pay them for it, but
there's fair exchange for sure.
You never ever question or think to yourself that you can't get money now, because you know how much other people's money is available.
There's an abundance of money out there.
Yeah, and what I want you guys to leave with this parting statement is the fact of, like, you know, money is created by man. It's printed on pieces of paper, and they're printing more of it than ever. And it's just a question of, like Grant Cardone says, it's like, who's got my money? You know? So the key points in this podcast is like, who's got your money? Am I in the right boat to row down this river on? And if I want to go out to sea, why am I in a narrow boat that's built for the river? Like, do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, just position yourself correctly, and I'm sure a lot of you will smash it in life in whatever you want to do. But that, my friends, is Tyler Newman. And he is an absolute winner, as winners can be, man. I'm blessed to have been in your apartment. Thank you so much,
Well, that was probably the most fun podcast I've ever done. So,
mate, you can't say that. Matt lives next door.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's definitely. I love your energy, man.
No, mate, I appreciate it. Man.
Yeah,
I appreciate it, and I appreciate your time. And guys, do me a solid favor, yeah. If you've got any form of value out of this podcast, how podcasts grow, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, but it's like, you know, even if you listen to 60 episodes. It helps if you share every episode if it resonates with you. It helps if you put it in other people's ears. It helps if you tell your friends. Not just once at episode 3. I'm talking about episode 37, at episode 100, at episode 99. I need as much help as possible putting this and my passion for this game in as many people's ears as possible to help, you know, put Tyler's wisdom in as many people's ears as possible. And I'd appreciate all of your help moving forward in sharing as much of this content as possible, and that's all I ask from you. That is literally all I ask from you. The fact that you stay to the end, as I always think there'll be value in it for you, and that you share it with as many people as possible. That's all I can ask. And I hope you've had a blessed listening experience and got a lot out of this, a lot of wisdom, and much love to you all.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Frankie Podcast.